military homes to be set aside for the migrants. Bear in mind that whilst that's happening, at least 2,500 British veterans don't even have a roof over their heads. These are people, by the way, who fought for this country, who are homeless. Trevor Colt is a former soldier and founder of the charity For Our Veterans. He's on the line now. Trevor, this is beyond me. I mean, I know everybody says I keep going on about that. So people who have paid all their taxes, fought for this country, are on the streets, and housing that could accommodate them is being used to house economic migrants, yeah?
Yes, Jeremy, I just want to point out before we start that I did found an organisation called For Our Veterans, but it didn't lift off, and I haven't pushed that on. What I do now is I'm an ambassador for PTSD resolution, and I help with veterans' mental health. Reference to the housing side of things. A while ago, probably about 2.5 years ago, I actually wrote into the then Veterans Minister, Tobias Ellwood. I had trouble getting through to them, and what I proposed and what the Veterans Committee proposed was to try and maybe get an old disused military site put up for veterans. Now, the sad thing is none of those empty military sites belong to the MOD anymore. The MOD sold them all off to private developers, and private developers sit on them for years. Then the government reaches out to the private developers and says, can we rent that off you for migrants?
Wow.
And then those private developers get hundreds of millions of pounds given to them for a site which they got off the MOD in the first place. And that's the one reason why we can't get veterans into disused military sites.
Is it in your mind a fact that successive governments, but we'll talk about this Tory government, are putting foreign nationals above its own veterans, yes or no?
Without a shadow of a doubt, Jeremy. I sent a letter, wrong, that's a lie. I sent an email into Mr. Mercer, who's under pressure. He's trying to do his best. And I sent it into the Prime Minister, Jeremy Hunt, a lot of them, and suggested that they could cut funds in certain areas. It would take £72 million a year to house all our homeless veterans. Now, £72 million a year isn't much whenever you think there's just under 6,000 homeless veterans, and those figures are from the Royal British Legion themselves. So there's just under 6,000 homeless veterans. Now, if you were to house them for a year, as I said, £72 million, yet we can't seem to find the funding for those veterans. However, we are wasting £300 million a month just to put people up in hotels, not just those that are fleeing persecution and war zones, as you mentioned, but those that are illegal immigrants and economic migrants. So I don't understand why we can't find the funds for that.
Completely agree. Harjap, if I can bring you back in.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever we think about the migrant situation, and I keep making the point there has to be a difference between escaping war-torn countries and economic migrants. Yes, you've made the point that you know, these people fill jobs. We've talked in detail already this evening about, frankly, I think the British people who aren't working should be, yes, incentivised, but some people should be made to go to work. How do we get to a point where asylum seekers in 2022, right, asylum seekers are making, well, they're getting housing, and veterans are on the streets?
We get to this point because this government, like your guest just said, don't care. He wrote to the MP, didn't care. There's a budget set aside for veterans.
Yeah.
Obviously, it wasn't spent on them. Right, now, the fact that the migrant is being housed in a place which was meant for veterans, it's not the fault of the migrant, it's the fault of the government. The government have an allocated budget. We have the option of saying to the migrant, why don't you work and pay your own rent? We've spoken about this before. Why don't we say to these migrants, OK, until your claim is decided, instead of us spending money on you, you can fill our jobs, pay tax, pay us rent, pay for your NHS. If your kids are going to school, you can pay for that as well. And then let's learn how to make money from migrants instead of chasing them and spending money.
Just one quick question. Top immigration lawyer, do you understand the frustration
Of course I understand the frustration. I would feel the same, right?
Yeah.
Of course, everyone wants what they deserve, but the fact is that this is the